I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Our focus today is on Missouri Southern. It's a program you may not be aware of. As you know, Missouri Southern has an international mission, opportunities for students and faculty to travel and study abroad. But today we're going to find out about some opportunities for community members as well as others called Southern Safari. And joining me today to start the program, we're going to have two segments, but to start, Chad Stebbins, the Director of the Institute of International Studies, and Irv and Leanne Langan. Thank you very much for being here today.
It's our pleasure, Judy.
We mentioned Southern Safari, and Chad, I think I'll let you describe, and if someone comes up to you, what is this? How do you explain Southern Safari?
Well, I would say Southern Safari is a travel club for alumni, retired people, people in the community, anyone who loves to travel but doesn't necessarily want to go on their own. We make all the arrangements, so all you have to do is really go. We also have some pre-departure meetings that are educational in nature. We bring in experts who have been to the country or destination where we're going, and they'll speak to the group and kind of give you a background so that you kind of have an understanding of the culture and the history before you ever set foot in that country. Great.
So it's a great way for Missouri Southern tying to the community and bringing people in for opportunities. How did this start?
Well, it started 5 years ago. Some alumni expressed to me that they would love to travel, but they wouldn't necessarily want to go by themselves or make their own arrangements, and so kind of a light bulb clicked on, and I thought, well, you know, we could provide this service to the community. We do a lot of study abroad trips for students, a lot of faculty-led trips, and so it's kind of a natural outgrowth that we would provide this service to the community. And so every year we have at least one trip. A couple of years we've had two, but they're very popular. The last trip to Scotland and Ireland, we had about 32 people from the community. So
good-sized groups that can travel. And of course, two of your travelers are with us on this first part of the program. Irv and Leanne, tell me a little bit about your decision, why you became interested in traveling with the group.
Well, when we heard that Chad was organizing a trip to Cuba, that had been on my radar for the longest time since a young man, and I was really excited to have the opportunity to go to Cuba, and it was a fabulous trip. So we got there. There's some things that I had an interest in just seeing, and then it was well worth it. So I'm so glad we got that opportunity to go.
And what year was that?
2016.
So it's one of the earlier trips that they planned.
You're right.
Right, traveling. So going places that perhaps you didn't have the opportunity to go without going with a group like this.
That's right. I don't think that we could have gotten in there without going through the Missouri Southern Safari.
Leanne, he mentioned being able to travel with a group. Tell me about that benefit of being able to travel together with others.
Oh, it's great because we usually have a great group of people that have a lot of fun, and we're easygoing and don't get all been out of shape when things happen, like in Cuba, that don't
you can't predict, right?
Yeah, you just have to go with the flow, but you also have the flexibility to go off on your own on some of these trips, and you get a lot of free time too, and you can do or not do certain things. So you have both.
I think, and Chad, they've mentioned Cuba. What are some other places that you've traveled to then?
Well, the very first trip 5 years ago was to Italy. We've made 2 trips to Cuba. We've gone to London, and this past October to Scotland and Ireland. Great.
So that's the next question. People say, well, how do you decide where to go? Where do these ideas come from for travel?
Well, we kind of respond to where the people want to go. We've done surveys, we do word of mouth, kind of, you know, if we hear, well, I'd like to go to so-and-so, and there's enough people who also would like to go, then that's our destination.
Do you have a lot of repeaters? The people have repeated the travel since the beginning? A lot of people have gone?
You know, they are nearly all repeats now. They honestly have such a good time, such a marvelous group of people, so fun to travel with, and you know, we've had people go on 3 or 4 different trips now.
So were you able to take the most recent trip as well?
We went, it was a Scotland-Ireland trip, and we went on the Scotland portion of it. So you had an option there to either go both Scotland-Ireland or Scotland only or Ireland only. We chose to Scotland, and we had never gone there before, and that was very interesting just to go, and we had a great time there too.
Well, I know we have some pictures, and our students can, who are working behind the scenes, can put some of these up while we're talking, and we can kind of let the audience see while we're talking as well. We're describing trips. So as we're talking about, when you're traveling, is a lot of sightseeing. Explain, you know, kind of give us a picture of what you're doing on these trips, some of the things you do.
I would say, you know, we try for them to be educational. Certainly there's plenty of touring and sightseeing, but there's always an educational component. And we almost always have a tour guide from that country. The one exception was London. You know, we kind of did that on our own, but when we were in Cuba, you know, we had a guide from Havana.
Oh, okay.
We had a guide from Scotland and a guide from Ireland, and you know, they were great storytellers. You know, they kept us all enthralled, but really, I think a lot of the learning just comes from each other. You know, this is a very savvy group of travelers. Even some young people go. We have people in their 20s.
So there's no age restriction.
There's no age restriction.
New alumni right out of school.
Right. We've had some, you know, 23, 25, all the way up to 80 years old. And, you know, they really make these trips better, having that range of people, the young people with their enthusiasm, right, and the older people with their sense of history and you know, stories that they can remember. When we went to Cuba, many of them remembered what Cuba was like prior to Castro in 1959.
For the revolution.
Yeah, prior to the embargo. And so it was interesting hearing how Americans would travel to Havana in the 1950s as kind of a vacation experience.
So the educational aspect, did you all learn a lot as you were traveling on these trips as well? I mean,
yes, a lot. Our tour guide in Scotland told us, we went to the various castles, and the main one in Edinburgh, and Irv was particularly interested in going to what's it called? Rosalind Chapel. And I think we just took off and went there on our own.
So you could do some side trips and say, I want to see this. And we have some photos that have appeared up on the screen, and I guess, Chad, you can kind of describe some of the sites and what we're seeing representing the countries and what they might be. So. Yeah,
this was from the Ireland trip, Mike and Ann Jernigan. You know, on one of the town squares, you know, met some interesting folks who were a little on the taller side.
So you can see the unexpected, perhaps, as you're traveling. So another slide, there's Irv. And this is one of the castles that you mentioned then? Or
I think that's Edinburgh Castle.
So you have the chance to explore, and the guide gives you some background, and here we have another scenic shot.
Yeah, the two of sisters went on the trip and had a great time.
Right.
Yeah.
And looks like you're along a cliff or a shoreline here.
Yeah, we're in Northern Ireland here.
Giant's Causeway.
Now this is one of the classrooms you were talking about.
Right, where we bring in experts in that particular country to speak to the group. So we usually have 2 or 3 of these sessions prior to departure, so people have a better understanding of what they're going to see and know some of the history about it.
So then you can really pique your interest, things you specifically want to see. Another group shot here.
This is from Cuba.
Cuba. Okay.
Yeah, the 2017 trip.
And so you can see the groups and as you say, people of all different ages. And this obviously is not Ireland; it's another tropical look at Cuba again.
That was the first trip to Cuba, and then this was the group in Ireland. From last October.
Great. And then we have one other.
This was London.
London.
London, okay. 2017.
Right. And as we go through, you can see that a lot of people seeing sites in other locations.
This is Brodie Castle in Scotland.
Scotland. Okay. And we have one more. That's kind of the picture, but you see the group aspect. I'm curious about that. He mentioned kind of a travel club. So you find that you have a lot in common with the people you've traveled with, and you know, sharing stories, sharing experiences, the love of just traveling.
I think so. I mean, it's very enjoyable. The groups that go in there with you, and it's people that are really genuinely interested in seeing that particular part of the country, and some had been there before, and just a repeat of there. But just seemed like a great time, and everybody seemed to get along very well together on these trips. And
right. Now, Chad, people who are watching might want to know, well, how do we get involved? So let's just talk a little bit of the nuts and bolts as far as, you know, if I want to go on the trip, what do I need to do? How do they find out about these things?
Well, Southern Safari has a Facebook page,
just
Southern Safari. We also have a website, mssu.edu/safari.
Through the university, right?
And so we publicize upcoming trips through the Facebook page and through the website, and also have pictures from our previous trips.
And so your next trip, people are saying, well, okay, we're recording this program the start of 2020. What's coming up this year?
Well, this December 2020, we're going to be going to Prague, Germany, and Austria for a European Christmas markets cruise.
A cruise actually on one of the riverboats.
Yeah, on one of the smaller riverboats, I think maybe a capacity of around 175. Okay. And so, you know, it's really a magical time of the year in Europe when you visit these Christmas markets, and there's just nothing like them in America anyway.
And you're getting a number of countries in on that same trip.
Right, we'll start in Prague, and then we'll take a motor coach or train over to Nuremberg in Germany, and that's where the cruise will depart, and then I think 4 or 5 nights in Germany, and then we end up in Vienna for a couple nights.
And seeing a different part of it, I imagine, by going down a river like that. It's versus, you know, just taking a motor coach everywhere. It's different sights and sounds. So people can find out more information by then. How do they contact you? Then just through those websites or call your office?
Or my email address.
Your email address and so forth. Now, one thing people might be curious about as far as traveling, is it more convenient to have some of these itineraries planned for you as far as we take care of the airfare, we know where we're going to stay, you know, some hesitancy sometimes people have to go to new places. What was, you know, what would you say to others for that? Do you appreciate having those things taken care of for you?
Yes, very much. You know, you don't have to worry about any of that part of it.
And those educational meetings are also very informational too on what to prepare for in that particular country. So they explain on maybe different things that we need to take and money exchange and sort of how it operates. And that's really rewarding that you have that added to that.
So you're prepared when you get on that plane to fly overseas.
Pretty much so, yes.
What you're going on, tying that together. What do you enjoy the most in taking these trips? What would you say? You've been on a number of trips. What's the most enjoyable moment that you can recall?
Well, something that's always kind of high on our list is to see if we can't catch an Irish pub wherever we go. And Chad got us to an Irish pub in Havana. We're very thankful for that. So, so wherever we go, we try to catch the Irish pub.
No matter what the country is, you're going to find out where their Irish pubs are.
There's always one.
You can always find one. And Chad, having led these trips, what do you enjoy on that side as far as organizing and working with the people who are traveling?
It's the people, without a doubt. You know, Leanne and Irv, and you're going to hear from Craig and Anita Tally and Jacquelyn Brown and so many others. They're just priceless to travel with. They're fantastic people, engaging, and I mean, I come back feeling invigorated, you know, and it's a privilege to be around these people.
A lot of energy, a lot of interest, enthusiasm for traveling and so forth. Well, you mentioned that we do have some other guests who are going to be on the program, so I'd like to thank the three of you for being on our first part of the program, sharing some information with us.
It's my pleasure.
And I invite you to stay tuned because we'll be back with more right after this.
We wake up every morning with a fire within us, to innovate, to explore, to inspire. We welcome the unique, the different, those who challenge the status quo. We have a passion for new ideas and turn visions into reality. We stand out and stand together. We are creative. We are dreamers. We are lions.
Welcome back. We're continuing to take our look at Southern Safari, and we have some more guests on the second half of the program, Jacquelyn Brown, and we also have Craig and Anita Tally. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And we're talking about travel abroad with the group and working and going different places, but I think we'll start off with, you know, we talked about people, different backgrounds, and Jacquelyn, you're a fairly recent graduate of Missouri Southern.
Yes, I graduated in 2013. And I, very soon after that, because I went to China with Southern as a student. And
so
then
study abroad as a student?
Study abroad as a student, and then very soon after that, I went to Cuba with the group.
So traveling became a real interest to you, thanks to Missouri Southern.
Yes.
And Craig and Anita, your background includes some travel beyond these trips. You've always had a love of traveling?
Yes, we travel quite a bit, actually. So.
Yeah, sometimes with groups and sometimes just on our own.
Okay. Well, what sparked your interest in Southern Safari? Why, you know, this group kind of caught this program?
I would say the people. We had several friends that had traveled with Southern Safari before, and they talked to us and said, you know, would you be interested? And we like being with them, and so that it seemed like a natural fit for us.
Great. So a lot of camaraderie then on the trip. People of all backgrounds and ages.
Yes.
And tying that together. Well, let's talk about some of the trips you've been on. Were you all on the most recent trip then?
Yes, I did the Ireland portion of it only.
And where did you go on this last trip?
We did both portions.
Both portions.
Scotland and then Ireland. Yeah.
Okay. Let's explain that for the audience. They maybe, you know, Ireland portion, someone, they basically got you there, and then you could decide, do I want to go to Ireland and Scotland, or just Ireland only?
The whole trip was, I think, 3.5, almost 4 weeks, and I work. I just couldn't
take off the whole month,
the whole month. But so I took off the 2 weeks that they were going to be in Ireland, and I decided to do that portion of the trip. Okay,
then you were able to stay and do both countries.
Yes, and we had actually been to Scotland before on a prior trip, but this one was going to be primarily in the Highlands, and we had not been up north into the Highlands part, and so that was the reason we chose to go both.
We said, let's go see both countries and stay there as long. And these trips are coordinated by a local travel company, I understand. Galaxy Tours and Cruises, kind of Joplin area, Neal Shore area, helps tie all this together, put the plans for you.
Right.
So do you find that's helpful as far as you know in advance what the tentative plans are, the itinerary? You don't have to worry about where am I staying tomorrow night, what am I going to do?
Yeah, and knowing, I mean, Anita and I can spend quite a bit of time just deciding what we're going to do this evening, where we're going to dinner or what, and so that spares us that kind of hassle. And
so you have those plans in place, but that you still have the flexibility when you're there. If you want to see something or you don't want to see something.
And you can sit here and they pretty much lay out what your options are sometimes, and you can choose what you want to do and what you don't, and if you want to spend your extra time going and doing something else in the country. Okay. When I went to London, I ended up going to Harry Potter world over there for one of my side trips.
And you've also taken side trips beyond the official
Yes, I can and the guide sometimes would say, if you're not going on this excursion, then you might want, here are some possibilities for you to check into in town or whatever. And Anita and I tend to like to go off on our own anyway, so that worked perfect for us.
And you mentioned the guide. I imagine that you find it helpful to have someone from that country taking you places.
Yeah, it was really good, both in Scotland and in Ireland. We had really good guides who knew the country, and when you're on a bus a lot, because on this particular trip we were traveling from city to city, and you want to get information on what you're passing by, you know, without necessarily having to be on your phone the whole time looking up for information. And they put a spin on it that's really fun and interesting. So yeah, we really enjoyed the information that they provided.
So you got to meet a lot of the people in these countries as well.
Oh yes, it's Cuba especially was very different for the people you got to meet, because it was totally different outlooks on life, and it's a very eye-opening experience.
So you have the educational program before you go that Chad mentioned first, but then when you get there, you're still continuing to learn.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about those educational programs. Kind of paint the picture. We saw a picture. It looks like somebody was talking to the group. What other types of things are involved in helping, quote, educate people about the location?
Well, one of the things that they suggest, they recommend a book or two that you might want to read in advance, and that is what I enjoy. I love to read anyway, and so I've always enjoyed reading the books, and they've been very helpful in the various trips that I've taken. They've been very helpful in the trip.
So it gives you insight into that country, the people, the things you're going to see, and so forth. On the trips that you went on, especially to Cuba, how much did you learn that really helped prepare you for that trip before you go? And obviously it's a place not many people in the United States know about.
I would say I learned a lot just from listening to the speakers that we had and everything, and kind of a do and don't of things to do in the country, and just learning the culture is really helpful.
Right. And talk about culture and foods. Do you find it interesting to be able to visit these different countries and have the authentic Irish food or the Scotch food or Cuban food?
Right. Yeah. That's one of the best things about it.
Yeah. So are you able to have group meals together, I mean, with the trip and things like that?
Yeah, sometimes someone will just take up their own initiative and just say, let's get together, here's a restaurant that I found on Google, and let's meet at 6, and as many people as can, you know, will gather there, and someone will just take charge and make a reservation.
Great.
You know? And then, of course, when you're with the tour company usually has a welcome dinner at the beginning of the tour and a farewell dinner at the end of the tour, and that's usually the whole group also.
So
when we went to London on this with Southern Safari, early in the week, the trip, we had a large dinner together. We all met, and then towards the end of the trip, we met again and had another dinner to wrap it up. And those were just fantastic.
I imagine you were sharing a lot of stories at those times.
Especially the last one. A lot of memories when, you know.
And so, did you find that maybe you went on some of these trips thinking, I'm going to see this, but somebody else on the trip said, no, let's go here instead? And you kind of take a diversion from what you originally thought you were going to do?
Oh, yeah, you learn from the people who've traveled before. Good suggestions, good ideas.
Well, what would you say to someone who's watching and they say, well, I've always thought about traveling, but I've been a little hesitant because, you know, I don't know what to do. Should I get involved with the group? What kind of words of advice? Let's start off with you as far as, you know, even the, quote, younger crowd, the people who will say, I'm working, but can I really take time to go on vacation?
I would say that it's honestly probably one of the best experiences I've had. The trips are so much fun. The Cuba trip, I was the youngest one by probably 40 years. It was one of the best trips of my life. It was so much fun. You get to hear all these experiences that you never would have heard before from people.
How about your perspective? You have travel experience, but would you say to someone else, you know, they're not sure they want to take trips, but what should they do?
Well, I would say travel is just the best. I think it's just a really important experience, you know, in a person's life. And if you're not sure, then going with a group is a real great way to start, you know, because someone else is making the plane reservations, someone else is making the hotel reservations, and they give you all the information you need as far as exchanging money and, you know, just all those kinds of details that a person would worry about if they hadn't traveled before. So it's a great way to start.
You're not getting off a plane in a different country saying, okay, where do I go from here? What do I do? And you have some plans of tying that together. So, well, think of your memories that have been on a number of trips. Which stands out in your mind as far as what you remember the most? Irv mentioned a thought and memory that he had in the first half of the program. Is there anything that stands out?
Well, yeah, on this trip, meeting Jacquelyn and then the two sisters, I think you saw a picture of them earlier. They were a delight. And if I could say to young people, come on and join the group, because really we enjoyed Jacquelyn every bit as much as she enjoyed us, and so I very much like that aspect of it.
So meeting and working with the others in the group. So Jacquelyn, any memory that stands out for you?
When I was in Cuba, I actually got to go ziplining through the Cuban rainforest, which was an experience that I've never had and will probably never have again, and it was so much fun.
So those chances of a lifetime to do something.
Chances of a lifetime that you're never going to get to do again.
Right. Well, there's an upcoming trip, as they mentioned, coming up in the winter, traveling to Europe and some of the Prague and Germany and so forth. For people, are you considering this trip as well?
Oh yes, very much so. In fact, I did not know until earlier that that was the location.
So that word's just getting out now.
So word's just getting out, and we just looked at one another, and that's pretty well it.
So we're going to mark that on our calendar.
Right,
to make the time. And I'm sure there'll be planning meetings or there's informational meetings for people who are watching that want to find out more about it, in addition to checking out the website. So find out what's involved. And the people who are traveling abroad, traveling in a group versus on your own, cost effective as far as being able to have those things, some things taken care of for you?
Yes. I find it to be more cost effective because there are group rates that you get doing certain things that you're just not going to get anywhere else.
Right.
And that just makes it more cost effective.
And plus, when a travel agency is helping make those plans, it really, you know, they know the places to look, they know how to get the best rates, they know how to get the best airline fares, things that doing it on your own, you might not have that information.
So they've got that knowledge and so forth. And we had a brief shot on the screen of the website showing people, you know, where they can go and to find out this information. So future interests, travel continuing to be a part of your life?
Oh yes. I'm kind of debating on which trip I'm going to go on. I don't know if I'm going to go on both of the next ones, but I'll definitely go on one of them.
And you as well?
Oh yes, we will travel until we can no longer travel. So, yeah.
And of course, I mentioned at the very beginning of the program, Missouri Southern's international mission. Of course, our students, as you've mentioned, studying abroad, faculty studying abroad. How do you feel this ties in with that international mission, Missouri Southern, and the community?
I think it's great for community members to get involved, and Southern offers so many opportunities in lectures and movies and musical events and things like that that you never run out of things to do if you're looking for something to do involved with the university.
And Jacquelyn, having been a student, had the opportunity to study abroad, did that make a major difference in your life at the time as a student?
Yes, it made a huge difference at the time. I was an international business major, so I had to study abroad, and it wasn't something that I was particularly excited about going away.
It was one of those requirements,
going away for an extended period of time. But once I had probably 3 days there, I knew that that was going to be it for me, and I was just going to want to travel all the time.
So that prepared you for your interest to future
Yes.
travel that continues today and working together. So a lot of information we provided today, just kind of a final word of wisdom you would share with others as far as Southern Safari. If somebody walks up to you, like I said at the beginning of the program, they walk up to Chad and say, what is it? How do you explain it to someone?
I would say who you travel with is really, really a big factor in how much you enjoy the trip. And these are great people, really fun to be with.
So the term he used at the beginning of the program, travel club, really kind of fits into this.
It does fit in, yeah.
And tying that together. So, well, once again, for more information, people can check the Missouri Southern website. Dr. Stebbins, Chad Stebbins, also has email, which should be stebbins-c@mssu.edu, so you can see that, and the website address we'll put up on the screen for you as well. And if you're interested, contact, and we have the program coming up in December, and I think they're already planning 2021 as well, so looking ahead for those trips. So thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. I'll see you again next week at the same time on the station. Good night.